Terrific. Thank you so much for agreeing to provide your oral history to the African American Episcopal Historical Collection at Virginia Seminary. We have with us the Right Reverend Gayle Harris of Massachusetts, who actually is no stranger to us in the Washington area. Spent a lot of time here. Why don't we begin by your talking about your childhood in Cleveland?
All right. I think I was blessed in a lot of ways with loving family around me, and particularly my father, and having so many relatives. We're all Buckeyes for several generations. My father was born in Youngstown. My mother also was born in Cleveland. And so we were really at home there. And I had relatives living either in the neighborhood or adjacent to the neighborhood I grew up in, which was on the east side of Cleveland. Of course, during segregation, that's where Black people lived. Though it wasn't a ghetto, I'll be clear about that. It was a ghetto perhaps in the sense that we were segregated from the rest of society. But it wasn't an economic ghetto. It was a very, very middle class upbringing. I remember as a little girl, I would look out. I had a window seat in my room, and I would look out to see the kids playing outside at recess when they were at school, because we were next to a Miles Standish school. And this was before I was in school. And I always sort of claimed that as my school, just looking out, though I never really attended there because we moved before I really was into first grade. But growing up, I came from a very ecumenical but Christian family. My grandmother was United Methodist. I had aunts that were Methodist, Roman Catholic. I had uncles that were Baptist. I had relatives that were Episcopalians that were very close to me, my first cousins and otherwise, and aunts that were Episcopalians. So we were across the ecumenical gambit. And my father was an architect. And so we moved to the Chicago area when I was young because he had more of an opportunity there to pursue establishing his practice. And he did residential homes, he did commercial buildings, but what his love was churches. And so I was lucky when I was out of school on the weekends or during summer vacation, when we weren't back in Cleveland visiting family, and my father was not in courses or setting up his practice, I would go with him on those weekends to the various churches that he was building or reconstructing. In the case of one, he built a new church over the original church so that they continued to worship in that space until it was time to demolish it on the inside, which was quite innovative at that point.
Right. What year was that about?
That was Mount Calvary Church, and I must have been about 8 or 9, so we're talking early 60s, early 60s. And his practice, again, went across denominational lines, but I was able to visit Mahalia Jackson's church and to hear her sing. She also lived in the south side of Chicago, 2 neighborhoods over from us. And my father was contacted and then contracted to do some renovations on her church. And also growing up, Dad became an architect in consulting with the Nation of Islam. I remember I came home from school one day, I think it was in 8th grade or high school, and sitting in the living room was Muhammad Ali and his brother.
Are you kidding?
No. I mean, I knew members of my family knew him.
I'm sorry. So was he Cassius Clay then or Muhammad Ali?
No, he was Muhammad Ali by this point.
Okay.
This is again sort of early to mid 60s. It must have been mid 60s. And he lived not far from us either. I was very lucky. That neighborhood in Chicago, Ramsey Lewis, we would pass his house going back and forth from school. We'd hear him playing. And my cousin ended up being one of his keyboardists for many years. Who else was it? Lerone Bennett Jr., who was the historian that Ebony.
Ebony and Jet.
Right. Well, I was in school. I would be waiting for the bus on 87th Street, and he lived across 87th Street from us. I lived at 85th. He was across 87th, and we would be at the bus stop together talking. And I was I loved history, and I was a history major in college. But we caught the bus every morning. He got off before I did because he caught. But I got to know him, and he knew me, and we had a lot of conversations. Because again, at this point, Martin Luther King had not been assassinated. The civil rights movement was in full tilt. And then even after that, as a senior in high school, I would ride the bus with him. And I remember talking about the great legendary and I have to say visionary prophets of the civil rights movement and of history, even before that. And I think that's one of the reasons I ended up majoring in Civil War Reconstruction, because when I went to college, there was no such thing as Black history.
Right.
So by studying the antebellum period and the Civil War, I learned a lot more about my own people.
And so you must have gone to college in what, 1969?
Yes, I did.
Yes. And well, let me back up for a second. Did you have siblings?
Yes, I have one brother who is still living and among us. My brother Nelson is several years younger than I. And unfortunately, he was born with some mental illness. And so that was trying for our family, of course.
Oh, I'm sure.
But he's a lovely man, a lovely, lovely, lovely. I am sorry, something is popping up on my screen saying that it's going to restart my system, and I'm telling it no. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
I don't either, but there we are. We're back again.
Okay.
I told it no. So hopefully if it does reboot, I'll come back to you.
Okay.
I'm sorry for that interruption, but we're always at the mercy of our machines these days, you say. So I grew up with a younger brother, and I went away to college. My father's practice at this point, he was the first Black architect to have his own license and practice in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and where he was licensed also. But his licensing went all the way from Minnesota to Maryland.
Wow.
And he built not just commercial buildings, he also was a HUD architect. Mayor Daley named him the architect for the city. If you wanted to get a daycare center license, my father was the, while keeping his practice. And that meant, hundreds of applications. And eventually he became the renovation architect, supervising architect for the public schools on the south side of Chicago.
What was his name?
Nelson Arthur Harris. And this year they're going to have the 50th anniversary of NOMA, which is the National Organization of Minority Architects. My father was a member of the AIA, but soon the Black architects and other people of color decided they needed to form an organization within, a caucus within the AIA. So my father was a founding member 50 years ago this year. Matter of fact, I'm going to go speak at their gathering. Daddy was the founding secretary of NOMA. So I got to travel a lot with my dad when I wasn't in school. And it was really great because I would be his driver, so we could take a nap here and there.
So you were like an only child until your brother was born.
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I was.
How wonderful. I have one brother. Sometimes I think I have one brother too many. So
my brother may think he has one sister too many. It's just the two of us. No, we have a great relationship.
Does the name Ethel Bailey Furman mean anything to you? The reason I ask is because Furman, she was an architect from Richmond, Black woman, and the first licensed woman architect in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Ah, no, my father may have known her. I went to a few of the AIA conventions, but when you're in high school and NOMA, you want to hang out with your friends rather than with your parents at a convention.
Right.
So I went to one or two of them, I have to admit. But I knew some of the founding members of NOMA, and they were all men at that point.
Sure.
and I knew their wives, the sort of the inner circle of the original 10. I did know growing up, but I didn't know beyond that, really.
Mhm. Now, were you Episcopal when you were growing up?
Well, that's the funny thing. As I said, my family is very ecumenical. My mother was a Baptist, my father
Yeah.
was Methodist.
Uh-huh.
And at the age of 12, when we moved into another neighborhood in Chicago, we moved next door to a Presbyterian manse or rectory. And it was an all-white neighborhood. We were the third Black family to move in. And I went to the store. My mother sent me to the store for something other the day we moved in. And on the way, I was called nigger. I was spat on. They threw eggs at me, and it was very difficult. As what was I, 13, 14 years old, and no, I wasn't that old. I was about 13, I think.
Mhm.
Anyhow, I came back, crestfallen, angry, and embarrassed. And when I walked in, my mother said, "The minister that's next door is the minister of the Presbyterian Church, and he has two young Black girls your age at his church, and he thinks that it'd be important for you to come and at least meet some friendly people outside of this neighborhood,
Mhm.
and that their church is sort of, slightly integrating. And there were white kids there too, but at least I would have some companionship." And so I began to worship at Chatham United Presbyterian Church, and ultimately at 14, I asked to be baptized and confirmed in the Presbyterian Church. And so that was my home church after we moved into that neighborhood. Before that, I attended whatever relative I was with,
Mhm.
whatever church
Mhm. Mhm.
they were. But
Oh, no. Okay, good, good, good. So where we left off,
yes,
you you had been baptized and confirmed in the Presbyterian Church, which was your church home until.
well, let me just say that baptism was a little controversial. Well, it was controversial, period.
Mhm.
My mother was a dyed-in-the-wool Baptist, and her family indeed founded Mount Haven Baptist Church in Cleveland.
Hmm.
And she was particularly antagonistic about this. And my father, so much that the minister, who now had changed and was a Black man, came
Mhm.
over during dinner one day to talk to my father and said, why don't you want your daughter to be baptized? And my father said, "I'm proud that she wants to be baptized. What do you mean?" And that's when my mother sort of spouted out at her displeasure in front of the minister. And my
Mhm.
father just turned to her, quietly says, "Well, thank you for your opinion. So when can we organize her baptism?" He said to the minister. So I am proud that my daughter wants to be baptized.
Oh, yeah.
So though, Mount Haven was a home too. I mean, I was christened.
Yeah, you paused a little.
Kente thing where
Yeah, go ahead.
youth group.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
also was the first female, as it were, we would call it acolytes. I think they called it altar boy there. That is, I would make sure everything was set up for the minister and light the candles. Basically, that's all I did. And if he needed a glass of water, he would whisper to me and I'd run out and get it and bring it back. I had to wear, like a choir robe or some kind of special robe, not like we have with, you know, katas and what have you.
Yes.
And because the minister, Reverend Johnson, said that I would join the ranks, the boys all quit.
Oh.
And so I was the only one, and he was happy. He said, "Fine, if that's what it means." Well, a few of them came back after a while, but for a year or so, I was the only one. So I got to serve every day and every Sunday, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I even, the youth asked me to do a youth sermon, and that was sort of new back then in the late 60s. And so that was my first sermon. Don't ask me what it was about, because that was what, 60 years ago,
Mhm.
55 years
Mhm.
ago, I don't remember. But I remember I preached about something or other.
And what do you think what was the significance of that experience in terms of your discernment later?
I think it was foundational. I
Okay.
think I received my biblical and spiritual founding in the Baptist Church, my love of Black gospel music and spiritual music, my knowledge of the Bible. I mean, you don't grow up in the Baptist Church and not know the Bible backwards and forwards
Yeah.
to some extent.
Yeah.
And so I early on began to love the Bible stories. When I became a Presbyterian, I was challenged to think more theologically
Mhm.
about my approach to the scripture,
Mhm.
that being literal and fundamentalist over again. He had to re-explain scripture. It was through the Presbyterian Church and again, I became at my own. Now, my dad was always there. He was on the board of Operation Breadbasket. He was on the board of SCLC and all of those things. But here was my chance because the presbytery mobilized the youth.
Yeah.
And so I was in the summer, especially out there marching. We were marching to the school board, and Martin Luther King led us over and over again. I remember it was the first time I ever saw 100,000 people, walking together to protest how segregated the schools were. And
Was that one of the marches in which he was hit with bricks and, oh my goodness? Okay.
when we went out to Cicero, that's
Yeah.
when it got really ugly.
Right.
But when we were marching downtown, we got jeers and yells, but most people just moved out the way. But Cicero was hard. It was being spat upon and all of that. And it was a little dangerous, but they were trying to go for the people in the front, not necessarily those of us in the back.
Mhm.
I was able to march and have my own voice in civil rights. And I think that maybe what I preached on, because Reverend Johnson was with us by that point. And our presbytery was full into civil rights and being a witness when other churches were sort of hesitant, shall we say?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was my sociological, theological, and justice my foundation.
So this was when you were in high school.
The marches, 8th grade and going forward.
I see. And you continued on in high school. When it was time to go to college, you went to Portland, Oregon, to Lewis and Clark. How many Black students did they have at Lewis and Clark?
20 out of 2,000.
20 out of 2,000. Right.
And weren't that many when I graduated. A lot of people fell off. They were trying to recruit in order to get federal funding. They were trying to recruit Black students there. The reason I ended up there out there the year before I graduated to a school, and I was looking at Vassar at that point, but they kept saying, you should think about going out there. So I went through the handbook of colleges, and the first one alphabetically in Portland is Lewis and Clark College. And I was accepted there in various other places. But when I started thinking about it, my father's practice really being east of the Mississippi and north of the Mason-Dixon line, except for Maryland, my father traveled a lot.
Yeah.
And I had relatives everywhere in the Midwest and in the East. And I said, if I go out there, I might be alone. I might not have somebody looking over my shoulder. Because, my parents were, they were good parents, very good parents. But
and they were well known.
oh yeah, and they also kept a pretty tight lid on me. Not that they needed to. I was sort of a goody two shoes.
Mhm.
And so I decided to go out there, and then they had chagrin from that because I was going to be so far away that, they would have to fly, which meant they had to let me know if they're coming by. They couldn't just drop in. Jackson State and Orangeburg and all those other events. And it was hard. Towards the end of my first year, swastikas started showing up. And Lewis and Clark was a very, very, filled with affluent, well-educated, socially, economically grounded people. And that was a shock to the system. And I remember there were just, as I said, there were just 20 of us. One night, they had this white statue on the campus. It was fairly new. Of it was white, I don't know, granite. I don't know what it was made out of. I can't remember now. But or some kind of stone. It was a stone, and it was pure white, and it had a man and a woman, maybe a child. It was like a family or something other. It was more than one figure, but it was sort of that, without a lot of features. It was, contemporary modern art. And so one night, we all took some black paint.
Of course. Mhm. Mhm.
And then we all left. And I did like Oregon. I didn't like some of the policies of the school because it was conservative, but not ultra conservative. It was a progressive conservative, let's put it that way. But they were not dealing with the issue of race very well.
Well, in the early 80s, I worked for the Senate Commerce Committee, which was chaired by Bob Packwood, and who turned to me one day and said, well, I'm not going to do a lot for Black people. And he said, because we don't have a lot in Oregon. And I looked at him and I said, well, the reason is because we couldn't really live there until 1926.
Right.
Right.
Well, I remember driving across the Burnside Bridge in 1973 and having heard on the news, I know it's the Burnside Bridge because I almost stopped.
Right.
I heard the Oregon State Legislature had finally ratified the 13th and 14th Amendment.
Wow.
You have to understand that, well, I felt fairly safe in Portland, and all the Black people lived in a neighborhood called Albina, and that's where my cousin lived. And I could go down to Eugene, to the University of Oregon, and everywhere in between and on the coast. But when you went south of Eugene and came to the area of Ashland and Medford, you had the John Birch Society, you had Klansmen, you had what we would call now militia groups. And they still had sunset laws on the books when I was there in the 70s. Our basketball team went down. We only had one Black player from Lewis and Clark. And when they went to the hotel to spend the night, and it must have been around Grants Pass, they were told they could not give a room to this player. And so the whole team said, then we're not staying here. And they drove back up north to Portland.
Wow.
Which was the statement for those students to do.
Oof.
And I remember when they came in, how crestfallen, and yet at the same time, how that Black basketball player felt he
supported. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You paused out a little bit.
Southern Oregon was really settled by Southerners.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Bishop Harris, I think you paused out a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just getting a note.
What does it say?
Internet isn't stable. If I move this, I'll get a better signal.
Okay.
I hope that did it. Maybe that would help.
Okay. So,
Things in here, and maybe it was blocked. Go ahead.
so what was your relationship to the church during your undergraduate years?
I was active in the chapel.
Uh-huh.
And I went back many years later, and the chaplain was still there. And after I graduated, and I saw him, and he said, "I remember us talking about you being ordained." I don't remember it at all, because I went back up there as a seminarian at the Church Divinity School of the Pacific. I went back up to Lewis and Clark. I always go back, hopefully with every 2 years at least. I love Oregon and the beauty thereof. And he said he remember having conversations with me about
you paused. Yeah.
what he did. Fruit and having these sort of, we would say today, rap sessions about life, about faith, and some Bible study. And I was very active in the chapel. And so much so that when it was time for us to graduate, I was co-chair of the matriculation service, which was held in the chapel.
I see. And when you graduated, you didn't go right to divinity school, right?
No.
Right.
I was sort of torn. I didn't know if I wanted to continue being a history major. I thought about becoming a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I also felt drawn to the medical field in some way. And so when I came home from college, my father said, "Why don't you work in my practice for a while till you decide, where you're being pulled?" And so when I came home in 73, I guess it was around August or September, I had a cousin named Jane Logan, who was born in the Episcopal Church. And she kept telling me about they had this new priest, and it'd be exciting for me to come and visit. And I went back to my home parish, and they were embroiled in some kind of power struggle. They had merged with another Black Presbyterian church, but they stayed in the building that I knew of and where I was baptized. And there was this huge controversy. Reverend Johnson had gone to Atlanta, and there was this power struggle. And when you're a young person, when you come to church and you see people struggling over power, it turns you off. It seems hypocritical. And so I didn't go to church for a while. And my cousin kept saying to me, "You got to come check out, because you've always gone to the Episcopal Church. You know the services." I even used to ask for communion, but back then, unless you were confirmed, you couldn't have communion.
Couldn't have it, right. I remember.
I loved it. And so
what did you like about it?
The liturgy, and the spirituality of the liturgy is what touched me the most. That while and our social connections, not if I do good, I knew I was at home.
Yeah.
That I had found home, that all the pieces came together.
Yeah.
Not only just because the liturgy was so beautiful, but it pulled together both our biblical understanding, our theological understanding, and our call to work out our faith in relationship with one another. And so I joined Holy Cross that day because it was, though it was centered in the liturgy, it was knowing that I was in touch with something beyond myself. The sense of mystery with the incense and the bells and all of that. And I was glad that my cousin talked me into it. And the priest that she was so excited about me meeting was Chet Talton, who is the retired Bishop Suffragan now of Los Angeles.
Oh, I see.
My parish priest, and he prepared me for confirmation.
I see. Now, let's see, was Raymond Mitchell in Chicago at the time?
Oh, yes, he was. And also, I became very involved with UBE.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he had
was
opinions about UBE.
Well, he had opinions about everything.
Yeah, well, he was my rector.
He was very much against women's ordination, and he was the dean of our deanery, the Southside Deanery. And so that presented itself some issues, but I became very involved with the UBE and looked up to people like Tuscarora Scott, and Maddie Hopkins basically was the leader of our chapter. And I was at every meeting. And I remember we one time brought in Kwasi Thornell as a young priest to talk about social justice from Detroit. Point in order to have presenters. Chet had left. We had another priest to come in as our vicar while I was in seminary, before I went to seminary, and he was totally against women's ordination. He was from Jamaica. And so Bishop Primo said, I will be your sponsoring priest. So, and Bishop Montgomery, who was the diocesan, was very supportive of me. He thought, I spoke up. I remember he asked me before the 1976 convention, he said, so tell me, Gayle, what if we don't pass women's ordination? This is my interview with him and Chet. What if we don't pass women's ordination at this convention? And I just looked him straight in the eye. I said, you will, but if you don't, it'll be the next one. And he started laughing. He said, this woman is really precocious here. And we had a really good relationship, even though he was hesitant about women's ordination. But Bishop Primo, he always had me in touch with Bishop Primo. So he.
Yeah, I think you paused again.
At another chance. Okay, can you hear me again?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. We can take care of it later. Right. So, well, first of all, can I ask you, what's the image behind you? The dome.
Oh, that is Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, yes. Mm-hmm.
I took that picture.
Did you enjoy seminary?
Yes and no. I was the first Black student in 10 years, in a decade at CDSP, and I was the first Black woman. And while I was there, there wasn't another African-American student the whole time I was there. Eventually, a priest from Zimbabwe did and joined us. And we became close and fast friends. Was because passed a couple of years ago, was the dean at that point. And he was very frank. When I went to other seminaries to look at them, as Bishop Montgomery sent me, they were very patronizing to me, like as if I didn't know the prayer book. They, in services, they come and open the prayer book and put it in front of me. I had known evening prayer backwards and forwards. I didn't need a prayer book.
Right.
And they were not frank about why they wanted me. But Fred Bush was. And we also were a part of the GTU, which meant I could take courses, the Graduate Theological Union, I could take courses across the spectrum. I took Reformation from the Lutherans. I took my ethics from the Franciscans. I took my theology from Jesuits. So and we had a fabulous faculty also at CDSP. Massey Shepherd taught patristics and liturgics, and we passed in '79. I started so it was being the only Black student and at time within. But I felt surprised again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think the signal was better when you had it at the beginning.
Why it's causing problems. Let me look at my internet. It says no. Oh, I know why. It's on the wrong. It went to another. I have two of them, and come on, connect to this one. This one should be connect. Just checking it. Hold on. This might do better. Okay. Hopefully this is better now.
Okay.
To my second internet connection. So this might hold better now. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's all right. Now, what did you intend when you were in seminary, when you graduated, to become a parish priest?
Mm-hmm.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But it was difficult. I remember I was one of the last ones in my class to have a position. I could not go back to Chicago. There would be no place for me as a woman. California, the Diocese of California was looking at me at the last minute. And meanwhile, a priest that I knew in Chicago had moved to Jersey City, and he wanted me to come there.
I see.
And so that's where I ended up going to Jersey City. I was ordained to the diaconate 1 week and was in the Diocese of Newark the next.
And then you came right to DC?
I was in Jersey City for 18 months about,
I see.
At Grace Van Voorst as a curate. They call it director of pastoral ministries. And it was a very difficult time there. It was very difficult.
What do you mean?
The vicar of this historic church, they've written books about it, the people on 2nd Avenue. I mean, it had quite a history of being, that part of Jersey City was sort of the place where the latest wave of immigration would be, whether it's Russian, Irish, Black, Puerto Rican, Dominican, what have you. It was usually right there in downtown. And they had such priests before as Ledley McLaughlin, Paul Moore, Kilmer Myers. It was, it was a very urban parish. But by the time I went there, the vicar, who was a friend of mine, really was turned off by the church. That's the only way I can say. He was not a part in his heart of the institution of the church. And what he wanted to do was to help rebuild people's lives by giving them skills as electricians, plumbing, construction. He started a business through that church to do rehab downtown, using what was left of the congregation, which was largely people who were addicted to alcohol or to drugs. So that was my congregation for the most part. And it was my job to bring in other people too into the life of this parish, this historic parish. And when I arrived, I was promised an apartment. And indeed, I was in the same building that was owned by the church that the rector lived in. It was a walk-up, an old brownstone walk-up. And I was on the 4th floor. And there were rats everywhere and roaches everywhere. And I had to sleep on the floor on a mattress. And The bathroom didn't work other than the toilet, so I had to go upstairs to the rector's apartment in order to take a shower. And then I discovered after I was there for a while, my pension wasn't being paid. All of
Oh,
those things were not happening. So my
oh,
father rescued me to the extent that he moved me into an apartment,
yeah,
and started, helping me pay my housing expenses and my car expenses to tell you
yeah,
the truth. And so I started looking around because I was not being treated justly.
right.
The bishop had to know this because it was a mission. And as you know, they send out notices to bishops when someone's pension is in arrears, and he never did anything about it. And so I then heard about this program of urban residency in the Diocese of Washington, and I applied.
And who was that? Was John Walker our bishop at the time? I
Yes, he
think
was.
Yeah. Mhm. What did you think when you came to Washington? Did you like it here?
If you ask me what are the best years of my life, I would say in Washington. I loved
Wow.
it.
How so?
I loved it because for once in my life, I didn't have to look over my shoulder as a Black person,
Yeah,
because Black people were in leadership in the whole metro area.
everywhere.
We know about Southern Maryland a little bit, but
Yeah, no, but everywhere. Yeah,
I could go anywhere unencumbered. I was glad to see Black people in leadership, both in the government, in society, as
Mhm.
well as in the church.
Mhm.
And I grew to be quite close to John Walker, and became president of the standing committee. And he had me on everything. And unfortunately, I was president of the standing committee. He was teasing me one day because a lot of things had happened under that time where we had parishes that tried to pull out because of women's ordination,
Yeah.
discipline of clergy, and what have you. We had to kick somebody out of the process because of misconduct. And he came to me one day and he said, Gayle, you've had everything to face as president of the standing committee except, the death of a bishop. And he laughed. And the next year,
Oh,
John Walker died. And I was president of the standing committee. And that was hard because I felt like I was losing my uncle.
right.
And at the same time, my father was dying of colon cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And matter of fact, my father had a hard time believing that John Walker would die because he so admired him and so respected John Walker. And he couldn't believe that God would take such a good man. And John Walker died in September. My dad died in February on my
Wow.
birthday.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What a wonderful
But it was the
service.
day. It was the day that Nelson, my father's name was Nelson Mandela walked out of prison.
Oh my
So I said
goodness.
to myself, both Nelsons are now free. My dad and Nelson Mandela. Yeah. But it was
Walked out without bitterness,
right. And started doing the job again.
with love in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
Woo.
Yep. I got to meet him while I was in Washington. And, I got to know Desmond Tutu. I mean, I remember one time we were at clergy conference and Desmond, I was sitting down and John was sitting next to me and somebody was on the other side of me. And John got up to get something and Bishop Tutu said, I'm going to sit here. I said, but Bishop Walker is sitting, that's all right. And John Walker came back and Desmond said, I want to sit next to her. I got some questions for her. And John started laughing. He said, I guess we have some competition for his attention. And so we talked for about 2 hours. I mean, the lunchroom was empty and he was struggling with the issue of women's ordination. And he was asking me a lot of questions. And finally he asked me, aren't you lonely being a single woman? I'm going to pray you up a husband. And it was funny, the next time he came to Washington, I was engaged. And John Walker said, I haven't told him, but you come on over with your intendant and we'll see what he says. So, they had some reporters. It was at John Walker's house. That, Sam Donaldson and some other folk.
Yeah.
And Tutu walks in and he comes straight over to me and he looks at my fiance and he goes, I prayed him up. You're engaged, right? Just looked at me. He knew I was engaged.
But how do you see that reluctance, when you look back on it,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think, how do you see it in hindsight when you look back over your shoulder?
I think the appeal to finding union again with Rome. I mean, that was one of the arguments. To me, is based on a false notion that there will be union with Rome anytime
Yeah.
in our lifetime because of their own issues and how they perceive the rest of the Christian church as not being the real church.
Mhm.
And I think part of it is also there are Episcopalians who are looking for authenticity by being as close to what Rome does or to be in union with Rome. To them, that gives us some kind of authenticity that we already have.
Right.
Another argument was, what if women were to get pregnant? Well, hello, a lot of people have this veneration of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and why do we? Okay. And look at all the women saints. And we know that Mary Magdalene was the first apostle in the sense she was sent with a message, and that's what the word apostle meant, to tell the men. And all the other ones that are so specious about, whether we're intelligent enough or Jesus only called males. No, he didn't. Look how he treated Martha and Mary and women always around him.
And
So,
Elizabeth.
Mhm.
And Elizabeth.
And Elizabeth.
Who proclaimed.
My middle name is Elizabeth. And
yes.
Yeah, she's a patron for me. Yes, she did.
Yes.
Miriam with Moses. I mean, please. But I understand that this is threatening. It's a change in society, and people were afraid what it would wreak. And it has. But if we're going to have those baptism vows to say we must respect the dignity of every human being, and that we must seek and serve Christ in everyone, and if we are really truly Anglicans and we subscribe to the 39 articles, which are at the back of our prayer book.
Yes.
One of those articles, I think it's 13, 14, somewhere in that area, it says the efficacy of the sacrament is not tied to the state of the priest. In other words, it's God consecrating that bread and wine. It's not the priest. We're just vessels through which God, and God has shown over and over again, whether it's the jawbone of an ass or a cross or a prostitute.
Yes.
Or a hedonist like Saint Augustine of Hippo.
Yes. Yes.
God uses the imperfect.
All the time.
Notorious.
All the time.
Including women.
All the time.
To do God's will.
All the time.
Mm-hmm. So looking again, and just in hindsight, those were turbulent times. Sometimes I said to myself, this isn't about me. This is about people's perception of God. How small is their God?
Yeah, yeah.
I have to tell you really quick, a quick story. So I had just been ordained priest by Bishop Spong, and it was time for the UBE Absalom Jones service in the Diocese of Newark. And they had three of us. They had a preacher, and then myself and another priest to sort of celebrate. And again, I'm the first Black ordained in that diocese since to the priesthood since the Korean War. And so when I went to the altar rail to give communion, people were moving over to the right so they could take it. These are Black people. Moving to the right to take it from the other priest, and no one was at my station. And the preacher got up and crossed the the row in order to take communion from me to demonstrate that. And a few other people did that. And finally, I said to myself, this isn't about Gayle Harris. This is about whether Jesus is present. And if you're going to reject Jesus from my hand, let's be clear about it. So I began starting at the middle and moving to the other person's station so that we would meet in the middle. And so people could not, if they were going to avoid taking communion from a woman, they had to do it clearly. And so people then started coming to my station. But that, I have to say that hurt as a Black person at a UBE conference,
yes.
celebration.
Yes.
But God has been always good to me. Say, Gayle, it isn't about you. Everything has to be about people's relationship with me.
Did you feel that you had been called to be on the front line?
I think I know I was called by God because God spoke to me. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I know I was called to this, and I ran away from my call for 2 years. I was afraid,
Right.
because I was in the Diocese of Chicago.
Yeah.
I did not know that I'd be on the front line.
Yeah.
I'm number 6 of Black women being ordained to the diaconate. I mean, to the priesthood. But that was a small group. I got to know Polly Murray. I got to know Mary Adebayo before me. Of course, I got to know Barbara Harris, Michelle Thornton, who really dropped out very early from the church,
Mhm.
and Sandy Wilson and I. We were we held each other up because we were the front lines. It was several years later that Ann Redding and Norma and Nan Pete and others were finally ordained, Ginger Brown,
Yeah.
Douglas Brown. And so for a while, we were our own support group. We would be on the phone with each other. If something happened in each other's life, we were there. When Barbara's mother died, when Nan was ordained, we were all there. When I was ordained, Barbara and she brought over she brought over the Urban Caucus, which was meeting in New York on an icy day night to come across on the path to be at my consecration as a priest. So I didn't know I was going to be in the front lines, but it became apparent fairly quickly. I didn't realize how few of us there were, because in Chicago, there are 3 of us at different stages as Black women going through the process, but the other 2 sort of dropped out. And it was good to have the support of my other sisters.
Did you struggle with bitterness?
Not until I became a bishop. To tell you the truth. There have been some bitter moments, but no. I mean, God has been so good to me. Again, saying, I am with you. And I think being a Black person, just growing up in America.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
This was not new to me.
Yeah.
What was sort of disheartening was when I ran into Black women who were threatened, or Black men who were threatened by women's ordination.
Yeah.
When I'm dealing with white people, I have to wait a minute and figure out which one is it. But usually I know right away. It's the skin. Okay, that's what they see. They see that before they see that I'm a woman. They see a Black skin. So I'm pretty clear about that with white people, but with Black people, it really, it did hurt at first, but I never stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it's not about me.
Right.
It's about the gospel of Jesus Christ,
Right.
and the love of God.
After, I think I may have mentioned this to you, after Dylan Roof in South Carolina, I was walking my dog around in the neighborhood, and an old man, a Black man who had driven a cab for many, many years in town and was taking this job as a doorman at this gated community right in the middle of the city. On weekends, his name was Mr. Jackson. I always said hello. And I said, Mr. Jackson, what do you think about this whole notion of forgiveness, the Black families? And he looked at me and he said, man, he said, we can't carry all that bitterness inside of us.
No.
It will kill us.
That's
so
right.
That's how we survive.
Right. And forgiving doesn't mean you forget. I think a lot of people
absolve.
Or absolve.
Right.
But it means that you get to move on.
Yeah.
Whether that person does or not, whether that person has changed. And you never know. I mean, I was just telling that to a priest who's having a great difficulty in our diocese. You don't know, by holding your head up and continuing to do your ministry, you don't know who you may be empowering around you.
Right. That's right.
Can I tell a quick story?
Please.
So I'm at Lambeth, and I am the only woman bishop of color, period. This is in 2008. Carol Gallagher was not allowed to go. She's a Cherokee, as you may know, and is of our church. She's here in our diocese, but she was not permitted to go. And so that was a heavy burden. And when I did reach out to my white sisters in this part of the Anglican Communion, they didn't have time for me, with the exception of one. Even though they promised before we went that they would, Barbara had them promised, since I was the only single woman and I'd be the only Black or woman of color, that they would, take me out to lunch or go with me to lunch, or they wouldn't do it. They were too busy. They were always too busy. Mm-hmm. So we have our, I think it was our second day, it might have been the first day, we have to meet with our small groups. And I'm feeling just completely alone, except for the bishops that I knew, that I was close to. Michael Curry being one of them. And I go to my small group, and there are 5 African bishops, and 2 of which are Roman Catholic. There was a bishop from New Zealand, a bishop from Australia, and a bishop from England, and myself, and 1 other American. And when I walked into the room, the African bishops, the glares, the animosity I could feel was palpable. And so we go through the first day, just introducing who we are by name and where we serve. And we have some questions to answer. And we're looking at the I am statements of the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
And this bishop from England just took over. And he was talking and weaving words, and it was like he was making a tapestry, and he was in love with the sound of his own voice, just to be absolutely clear with you. He didn't let anyone else speak. So day 2 rolls around, or 3, and the same thing is going. And I'm also looking at these African bishops glaring at me. And so finally I said to the English bishop, because basically I had it, I said, "Excuse me, my brother. You have been waxing eloquently for 2 days now. And you know what? I would like to hear how my brothers from Africa feel about this statement about I am, I don't know if it's the resurrection or I am the life or whatever, it was one of the I ams." Mm-hmm. And I said, I would like to hear their perspective, because they come from a different place other than, Western civilization and culture. So my brothers, would you please, share with us your thoughts? Because I was trying to shut this guy out, basically shut him down. Mm-hmm. And they turned and they looked with me with sort of disbelief. And one of them finally said, "In my culture, one does not speak in the council of elders until one is invited in. And my sister has invited me to speak." That bishop did not leave my side for the rest of Lambeth. Every time I went somewhere, he was bringing his wife. He was always, wherever, even when we went to our other Ndaba groups, he was right next to me. I don't know if I changed his mind about women's ordination, but I certainly believe that he saw a sister of God in me in ministry.
Who affirmed his humanity.
Yes. Yeah. And I have to say that when I tore my meniscus, like a lot of bishops did there, because we're walking on heavy concrete a lot. He wanted to carry me from place to place. I said, "No, please, I can get a scooter. It's okay. It's okay." And I've maintained, one relationship from that group. So what I'm saying is, even when it's hard, just showing up, sometimes you may liberate another person. You might give them another perspective. They may not agree with you, but you might open a window. You never know how God is using you. And to me, that was a fascinating moment, because all I did was ask this man to speak up a little bit, because the other one wasn't allowing him to.
Are those humbling experiences for you?
Yes, because God's using me.
Yeah.
I am always humbled, not only by how God loves me, but how God sometimes, when you least expect it, makes you a vessel of God's grace. Yeah. That is humbling, because that wasn't me, it was God.
Yeah. Can we talk about your ascension? Oh no, you went to Rochester. I forgot about that. What was that like? Was it a merged parish?
Yes.
Okay.
St. Simon Cyrene was founded in the 1920s as the Black congregation, and they hand built their building. And I had been there for a UBE conference and been there before, many, many years before this process of them joining over a 5-year period. St. Luke's, which was the Church of the Gentry, it was the founding church, had the oldest building in Rochester.
Mhm.
Colonel Rochester himself and his family built it.
Mm.
And the two merged. St. Luke's had the building, the money, and really established network within the life of the city and diocese. And St. Cyprian's brought with it its passion for outreach into the Black community with the Right On School. And people like St. Julian Simpkins was the rector there. My bishop, Quentin Primo, was the priest there too at one point. Matter of fact, he used to come back and visit in the summer and let me know he was coming because I knew he would want to get up and give the blessing at the end of the service. It's funny how along with Bishop Primo, most of my ministry until he died. And so they merged together and they kept both rectors for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And one of those rectors was the priest at my parish when I was being ordained to the diaconate, Gregory Williams, who, though he did not support women's ordination, gave me a meditation the day of my ordination and allowed me to wear his vestments as a deacon, which was gracious of him to do, even when we disagree. Yeah. And so he was my predecessor at this church. And I have to say, the architecture was strange. So I said my first Sunday, I was going to sit in the pews. They have a wedding cake chancel. There's only 2 in the Episcopal Church. Uh-huh. I wanted to see how this worked out liturgically. So I sat in the pews with my then husband. And it was interesting. It was announced that, I was there. And people came up to me, and several white couples came up to me because it was, very integrated, probably about 60 white and 40% Black. Mm-hmm. And several families came up to me and said, well, since they've called you, we will not be here anymore. We're leaving this church. And that's when I found out that no one in that church had ever seen a woman celebrate.
Wow. Wow.
And then I had a Black parishioner come up and say, I don't think women should be priests. And matter of fact, I'm just going to come next week because I know your voice is going to be high and squeaky and it's just going to distract me from your priest, but I'll find another church. But I'm coming next week just to see what you do. And so the next week, those white couples were gone. And I preached and celebrated. And what I said to them, since I was the first rector, since the merger, that indeed I am the rector of St. Luke and St. Simon Cyrene. I am not the rector of St. Luke and the rector of St. Simon Cyrene. I am the rector of both. And whatever joys and pains and sorrows and successes St. Luke's has had in its past, St. Simon, that is now yours. And St. Luke's, whatever joys, sorrows, pains, disappointments, failures, and successes St. Simon's has had, you now own. And they were coming up on their 175th anniversary. And so we named a Black man to be in charge of bringing the whole church together.
Oh, how wonderful.
And that Black man who had said, I'm going to leave, came up to me at the peace and said, you're all right. You don't have a squeaky voice. It's okay. Yeah, I'll be back. You all right? You all right? You all right? He was one of my most loyal members.
Oh, I love our people.
I think part of this whole issue about whether you're talking about sexuality or gender, it's about anticipating something.
Yeah.
And not expecting Jesus to be present. Oof. It's anticipating the worst and not that Jesus might show up. Mm-hmm. So after that first year and having to make sure that all the groups were inclusive. There was one group that was a white remnant. It was called the Rochester chapter. And I kept saying, what's the Rochester chapter of? And it was white ladies who had tea once a month.
I see.
And so I just showed up.
Yeah.
Uninvited. And I said, well, you have other women here that you need to invite to this who are also retired.
Yeah.
And they happen to be Black.
Yeah.
So it after the first year, it was a great call. It was a good place to be. I did like Rochester. And because I was the only Black rector, there was one other Black clergy who really didn't really identify that much with the Black community. He was an academic anyhow. I've made I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm just remembering something. Our church was across the street from the regional newspaper, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle.
Right.
Otherwise called the DNC, because that's sometimes what they did to the news. DNC, surgical cut. They used to call me Miss quote, as in MISS quote, that they could always come over about anything. And we were in the news all the time, which gave us a high profile, which was really great for my parish. They needed that, and they loved it. They loved that. I was on Blue Ribbon panels of the city government, and that after I was there a few years, my cousin was elected mayor of Rochester. So it was really good to have me as their rector.
Who was that?
His name is William Johnson. He was the head of the Urban League for more than 20 years, and he never ran for office until he ran for, and he was the head of the Urban League when I arrived. He ran for mayor, had more than one term, and had something like a 70% approval rate. He was really good. Anyhow.
But you know what I see? A line of a vector from those marches in Chicago to being quoted in the DNC in Rochester.
Right.
It's a vector.
Yeah.
Right. You were on a path.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, you're right. It's linear. Yes.
Yeah. How did you become bishop? How did you become elected bishop? I know you were. There was an election, but that's not what I'm asking.
Right. I have to tell you, back in Washington, people kept saying that I was going to be a bishop, and John Walker said I was going to be a bishop, and he still called me that wild woman, but yeah, I mean, we were very close. And with his death, people began to say, well, you should be the next suffragan, or you should run for diocesan. And I didn't want to run for diocesan. And we already had a suffragan who was the acting bishop. And he kept saying to me, you're going to be a bishop, but it's too soon. You don't want to be a bishop that long. This is not a fun gig all the time. And so when I was being called to Rochester, when I was called to Rochester, that's when the diocese decided it was time to call for a suffragan. And so I had just left, and all these people in Washington were calling me saying, you need to run for suffragan, you need to run for suffragan. And I had never thought of it, I have to tell you, but I had to think, I just took a call. What kind of person would I be? It's to turn around and run for suffragan. I said, to me, that's unethical. It's insensitive. It's arrogant. And so I said no. And I disappointed some of the Black clergy because I probably would have been elected if I had run. Probably, I'm saying. I don't know for sure. And Jane Dixon won, who was my colleague and my good friend. Yeah. And I was glad for that. So, that's the first thought that really went in my head. And my bishop in Rochester said the same thing, that I think you're going to be called a bishop. So again, God had primed the pump. When I was in Chicago, I didn't want to look at ordination, but it was my priest and my vestry and other members of the church at Holy Cross kept saying, we're not sure we think women should be priests, but we think you should be. So God primed the pump by having them say this to me. And so that when God called me, I was ready to become a candidate for ordination to the priesthood. And I think that's what God did around this election. I did not put my name in, but my name came in through clergy of the diocese. It was spat out from the CDO office of our church, the clergy deployment office. And my bishop and others put my name in. So it was not something I sought, but I somewhat became open to it. One of my mentors said, Gayle, don't say no until God tells you to say no. And if it's not to be, it's not to be. But you have to trust God in every process, even when the people themselves are fallible, even when they have their own agenda. You have to trust God. So I allowed my name to go forward.
And given your reputation in the church, of which you were aware.
Yeah, I mean, I had served in the national
Right.
church. Pam Chinnis was one of my mentors, who was president of the House of Deputies, and she put me on several committees and what have you. And in Washington, I became a deputy to convention. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, you realized that I assume that you had a very good chance of being elected.
No, I didn't. And I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because my name is Gayle Harris. And this would be the successor to Barbara Harris. And why would a diocese elect another Harris, another Black woman, and another left-handed Black woman as bishop?
All right.
So I said, again.
But you didn't smoke tobacco.
Right. Well, I did at one point in my life. I did.
Okay, well, we all did.
At one point in my life. Yeah. Matter of fact, side story, when Barbara's election was happening, I drove up from Washington and took some hors d'oeuvres, and it was just she, her sister, her best friend, Dorothy, and me. We're the only ones in her house during that election. And she reached over and grabbed my hand and held my hand while we're waiting for each ballot to come in. That was one of the most powerful moments in my life. And that's another long story about what happened when the call came. But it was a powerful moment. So I just thought, well, they're not going to do this. But I also knew that the diocesan wanted a Black woman. And because Barbara and I were close, that if I came in, I would not push or resent Barbara. I wouldn't push her aside. She could still have a life in our diocese. And of course she should. I mean, she bore the brunt, the fire of the day. She had death threats left and right. She got poison pen letters. The day of her consecration, Nan Pete and I were ushered into her room so that her police bodyguard could go out and have a break for 15 minutes. And we had to lock the door behind us because they were so afraid something was going to happen untoward. And at her consecration, there were a couple of priests there with guns. She didn't know it. We found out about it afterward because they just knew, because there were so many credible threats against her. And so while knowing all that, I didn't think I would be elected necessarily, but I was trusting the process. But I knew that those were huge shoes that I could never. She had tiny feet, but those feet wore the golden slippers. And anybody following behind Barbara would have difficulty, but I didn't look at it that way. I knew that she had suffered so much and was so quiet and gracious about it and rose above it. That's the only reason why I went on ahead and let my name go forward. And I was surprised that on the first ballot, I was only 2 votes short of winning the election.
So it was cast at that point. You knew that it was going to be done. Did you feel at some point, the image that I have when you speak of Barbara Harris and you, is that she took you by the hand and placed your hand on the bishop's crook?
I would say so, yes. She was more than elated at my election. She used to call me her sister daughter. Barbara didn't have any children, and she would
Yeah.
tell people over and over again, I'm 21 years older than her, but I'm not 21 years more wise. She was wonderful. She was gracious in that way. And matter of fact, when I came here, I lived with her until I was able to purchase a home and
Uh-huh.
move into it. So we lived together. I mean, Barbara and I were quite close. And I was sad when that closeness dissipated later on due to the diocesan bishops' vendetta against me. But we still came back together to some
What do you
extent.
mean by the diocesan bishop's vendetta against you?
The diocesan bishop, Tom Shaw, was a superior in an order. And so he expected everyone to live under his authority as monks do, which is absolute authority.
Yeah.
And I never contradicted him in public or in front of other people, but I was also somewhat independent. And I would offer him my thoughts on occasion, because being a suffragan, you know your place.
Mm-hmm.
But he grew to have a dislike of me, an intense dislike.
Mm-hmm.
And he began a vendetta to have me unseated. Accusations that were false about my sobriety. He told people that I was using drugs and alcohol, and I was sort of floored by that. And what had happened was I had fallen in someone's home, and I should have died. Matter of fact, I was paralyzed for a few minutes. And this is when he was starting to trying to get rid of me. And I also had a knee surgery, and I ran out of Tylenol in my office, and I was still walking on crutches. And my executive assistant said, well, let me go out and get you some Tylenol. That was called asking my secretary to get drugs.
Oh.
That's what it morphed.
Yeah.
He never told him it was Tylenol. He just said she asked her assistant to go get her some drugs. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So things were spiraling. And he called for an intervention. And I was sent to Hazleton, and I was there less than 24 hours. And they said, why are you here? You're not an alcoholic. You're not on drugs. They called my doctor, who I see every 4 months because I am a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
And she was very angry. Matter of fact, she was a friend of Tom Shaw's, and she became very angry because this is sort of impinging upon her practice of medicine. And matter of fact, they started using me at Hazleton to help lead groups while I was there. I had to take all these tests and stuff. And when it came back that I indeed had no problems with drugs or alcohol, Tom said, I'm going to find something against you. And he was calling up my close friends and colleagues and telling them all kinds of things about me that were not true or were exaggerations. And they would call and tell me that, Gayle, he's trying to get rid of you. And that's what they told me at Hazleton, that I was sent there in order for him to have reason to get rid of me. And the vice president of Hazleton said, Gayle, if I had a job here, I would offer it to you right now, because he is going to get you. I think you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. And we would love to have you on the staff here.
Were you ever in recovery? Never. Right.
No, I never had a problem.
Right.
Like anybody, I might have gotten high here and there, but
Well,
I didn't drive a car.
1970 in Oregon. Yeah.
But they also sent me again to Baylor for the same kind of thing. And they also said in their first paragraph, she was sent here for us to convince her not to go back to work.
Oh.
But she passed everything. And so finally, the presiding bishop had to step in and say, unless you have charges, credible charges against her, you must let her, Catherine Jeffers Shorey said, you must let her back to work. And he did everything when I came back, because I was on leave of absence, to make my life miserable. He disrespected me publicly, and it was hard. And that became a wedge to some extent between Barbara and I, because she was indebted to him.
Right.
What I faced under Tom is what she faced under David Johnson.
Right.
And Tom came in and rescued her in a sense. He said, what do you want to do? How do you want your ministry? You get the same time off as I do. I mean, he liberated her last year's as bishop. And so she was indebted to him. They were very, very, very close. And so her loyalties were being stretched. She could not be with him and still be close to me. And she could not be close to me and also be close. I mean, he put her in the middle. And I think she realized that a few years after he died.
How long after the presiding bishop's order to him did he die?
Oh, see, this was 2010.
Yeah.
Tom Shaw called for the election. We elected Allen in 2014.
Yeah.
And Tom died in October of 2014 of brain cancer.
Did you, maybe he was suffering at the time.
I don't think you can suffer that long with brain cancer, and
Yeah.
it wasn't diagnosed until 2013.
Okay. So what kind of questions were you asking at that time?
I have to tell you, all my questions were to God, especially during the time when I was not allowed to go in the building. I kept asking God, please let me go. Please let me just resign. I've had it. And God was very clear to me, no, I'm not, the old song, please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. And that's the message I received back from God, that I'm not through with you yet. And I kept saying, what is it that you want me to do? What is it? Because I have to say, it was probably the darkest time of my life. Because everyone in the diocese knew if they were to contact me and Tom found out about it, then they too would be treated and be ostracized. And I even got a few private notes here at home saying, Gayle, please do not tell Tom. Because if, I'm worried about my career, I'm worried about my ministry, and I heard it over and over again when I came back. Gayle, I didn't reach out to you because there were a few clergy who stood up to him. So my question was not to Tom or to the diocese, it was straight to God. What? Please release me. Let this bitter cup pass me by. It felt like I was in Gethsemane for 6 months. But I knew again in my heart, God was saying, stay put. I am walking with you. But it was hard. I had to get a lawyer, matter of fact.
The church.
The church is made up of human beings.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to know.
That's right. That's right. Now, was your mother still with us?
My mother just died in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, she was about to turn 99. She died just before, yeah. My mother was not happy when I became an Episcopalian and refused to come to my confirmation.
Oh.
And all during seminary, she would send me newspaper articles about how the Episcopal Church was facing schism, that people were leaving because of women's ordination. She sent me, whenever time she saw anything in, the Chicago Tribune or in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, she would send that to me. She was not supportive. She was just the opposite. And yet when I finally graduated from CDSP and was ordained, then she would drag me everywhere saying, this is my daughter, the priest. It was very strange.
Complex woman.
She was.
Did you have children?
I have stepchildren from my husband's previous marriage, 3 of them. David, who lives in Tennessee. They're white. My husband was a white priest he was born in England. He immigrated to Australia, came to the US to work on his doctoral work. David, who's married to Heather, and they have a son who's my grandson. And then next would be Ruth, who is a veterinarian. And she lives in Wisconsin with 2 children who are my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And then my youngest stepdaughter, she calls me her mother, Naomi, lives in Australia.
Oh, Ruth and Naomi. Yeah, right.
No, David, Ruth, and Naomi.
David, Ruth, and Naomi. Yes, yes.
Naomi was the great grandmother of
Yes, David.
David.
Absolutely.
But they're a different order. David came first.
Right. Now, when did you start? Were you healing during that time? When did you start the rapprochement, if there assume that there was in fact a schism between you and the diocese, or what you felt?
Between me and Tom.
And Tom, okay.
And his cadre of they used to be known as Friends of Tom, those who were receiving his favor. So I would say it wasn't the diocese. Certainly the lay people in the pews did not know what was going on.
Yeah.
But the clergy did.
Yeah.
Tom and I never reconciled. I tried. I sent him letters and notes reminding him of Esau and Jacob. He would not have anything to do with that. He did everything he could do to degrade me. Up until the last time I saw him, which was at the consecration of Allen Gates, when he turned to me and looked and said, "Well, I won't see you around the office anymore." I said, "Okay, if those are your last words to me." And indeed, he left word that I was not to participate in the funeral, his requiem, and that I was to sit in the pews, and that I could help distribute communion if I was needed, but that would be it.
What did you do?
Well, I said, I'll go by his last wishes. We were told that by the then canon to the ordinary. And so I was very happy to. And when I received an email saying all participants need to be at a rehearsal, I just wrote back, "I'm not coming to the rehearsal because all I'm doing is if you need me." And from that response, the diocesan bishop talked with the superior of the order, because Tom was a monk, and they demanded that I come invest. And I said, no, I mean, I really protested. I said, we need to do what Tom wanted. And they said, no, you're a bishop of this church. And so I vested, and it was difficult.
You vested, and did you process?
Yes.
Yes.
And the presiding bishop, Catherine Jeffrey Shores, was there, and she really was very solicitous of me because she knew that a lot of people knew that I was not to be there and invested. And she was very comforting, shall I say, to me. Yeah. Even from the grave, he was trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you forgiven him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But forgiveness, again, does not mean forget.
Right. Absolutely. Right. So what's next for you?
Retirement. Well, right now, our diocesan is on a sabbatical. And so it's a very busy time for me right now. Beyond our diocese, I am, for the time being, the co-convener, or the convener really, of the Episcopal Bishops of African Descent, which is EBAD. I'm the chair of the Pastoral Development Committee of the House of Bishops. And so that's enough work right in there, given the size of our diocese. We're one of the largest dioceses, and it keeps me on my toes constantly, and dealing with New England culture is certainly different from the Midwest that I grew up in. And so I am now 70, and I must retire in 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, that's just a full disclosure. I got a call from Harold Lewis.
Oh, Harold, yes.
Who asked me to to do some editing and maybe some writing on the book.
Yes.
Right. So
Please do help him. I love Harold. When I was in Washington, he and Claudette and I and other folk would hang out together on occasion. And, I was a young priest and he was there giving me some advice and mentoring me too. But also having a place, because I was single, to hang out on holidays when I wasn't with my family.
Yeah. Now, there are rumors about your coming back to Washington.
Really? I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me, Riley.
You're welcome. Well, this is what Wesley said to me at the Cater House.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, she's coming back.
Well, I'm glad he knows that, because if somebody would ask me, where am I from? I always hesitate, not because I've lived so many different places, but I want to say Washington.
It's changed.
I know it's changed because I keep coming back.
Now, all right. So, what do you think? And then I know you have to go, and I'm not going to keep you much longer, but I just have two more questions. One is, what do you perceive as the challenges for the church in the near term?
Mm-hmm. I think it's been the challenge all along in the Episcopal Church. We have a culture, a mentality of build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Those days are over.
Yeah, they are.
They've been over
since
the 70s.
Yeah.
Our church is loath to do what Michael Curry is calling us to do. And again, this may be bringing in part of my foundation as a Christian.
Yeah.
We need to tell our own stories. We need to talk to people in the street, at the Stop and Shop, at the car dealership, wherever we are. We should be identified on our Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I am a member of such and such church. Ask me about it. We need to post that, we had a great day, and not just about worship, about the activities that we do, because the world out there does not know us. What they see out there about the church is either the Roman Catholic Church and its magisterium, or the fundamentalist evangelicals who are homophobic, sexist, and sometimes also racist.
Right.
That's what people think the Christian church is today.
Right.
We're not out there giving the counter story that is not all of Christianity. Right. Besides us, there are Presbyterians, UCC, and what have you. And so our biggest challenge, and also I think our greatest opportunity, is for people in the pews to start telling their story of faith. It doesn't mean that you have to debate, demean another person. It doesn't mean that you have to get them to agree with you and persuade them. Just simply tell the story of your faith in the fewest words as possible, because that's what Jesus did. He told parables, he told stories to bring in the truth and to relate to people where they are. For an example, I was visiting one of our churches, very tiny church, when I was a new bishop. And after worship, the best evangelical speech I ever heard was given by this woman, an older woman named Betty. She did it in 4 sentences in less than a minute. She said, "Bishop, I was diagnosed with an advanced and aggressive form of cancer and faced 4 months of radiation and chemotherapy, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I have a family and children, and I just could not cope with all of that. But the members of this church brought us breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for 4 months. I know God's love because that was God's love in my parish." And I told her, "Betty, go out and tell everybody that." And when I visit congregations, I tell them that story. Oh, I've been doing it now for 15 years. if that's all I'm asking you, that's all God is asking you to do, is to share. You don't have to persuade somebody. You don't have to debate them about the finer points of theology. You have to invite them into your story. That's what Alice Walker says. The thing about telling a story is that you're taking the time with someone to invite them into what you understand. And when you listen to their story, you're invited into their life.
Yeah.
And so that is the biggest challenge, because the days are over. The culture of this country no longer supports the church. You know, when you and I grew up, Sunday morning, nothing was going on TV when I was little. Meet the Press, Cardinal Sheen, and
Right.
Face the Nation.
Right.
So I went to church just to get away from that, right?
Right.
And the movies were not open. The grocery stores weren't open. Nothing was open until after church.
Right. And children were not playing their sports teams at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
And the NFL didn't start until 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
So you were able to go to church and come home and be with family or have fun or watch TV or whatever, or go to movies, but not till after that sacred hour. And that was supporting the church. We don't have that anymore. We have competing priorities in people's lives.
Yeah.
And so under this COVID, we have learned how to do things now by Zoom, and we have to keep doing that and live streaming, as well as have in person. We need to have Bible studies and meetings by Zoom, as well as in live person. We have to have a hybrid life, because that's the life people are living.
Right.
We have got to be able to tell our stories. And I have to tell you, Sunday after Sunday, when I ask people to tell me in 4 sentences how they know God is in this church, Episcopalians are loath to do it. I even had a vestry member tell me, I can't say the word God and Christ and Jesus. I'm not going to say that.
Well, you've asked them to testify, which is why they don't like to do it,
We need to be comfortable enough in our own faith that we can tell one story about how God has touched us, or what is important to us about our particular parish or our tradition. I think we're embarrassed to do so. We have used our liturgy as a crutch instead of something to enable us.
Right. The bishop here, Bishop Marianne, and I talked about a new role for St. Mary's Church in Foggy Bottom, but that was some time ago, and nothing really happened. But my idea was that I know so many well-educated Black people who are not churched.
Right.
And they're not churched because they walked into somebody's church and they said, you have to check these boxes. And if you don't, just go back out and go home. I said, let's have a place where we can ask our questions.
That's right. That's what I love about the Episcopal Church. It's not about certainty.
Right.
We don't have dogma. We do have a doctrine, but within that doctrine, there is a way of trying to understand what it means to you personally, as well as to the church at large. One of my greatest friends, closest friends, was Jim Adams. I don't know if you ever knew him. He was at St. Mark's, Capitol Hill for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And he wrote several books. And one of them is So You Think You're Not, So You Think You're Not a Christian, and Skeptical Person's Guide to the Church. So you think you're not religious. I'm sorry. So you think you're not religious. And he based his ministry on bringing people in who had doubts about the church or had conceptions about the church that were not based on fact, but by an experience here, or their ad hoc sort of, to say, yes, please bring your questions in, because that makes us stronger. And a colleague of mine once put it, having doubt is not the opposite of faith. Having certainty is the opposite of faith. You don't need faith if you know something for certain.
Well, sometimes somebody said to me, well, what's the theology of the Episcopal Church? I said, well, I would say that we really don't have a common theology with this doctrine. We don't have a common theology, but we do share a common meal. We have common worship and a common prayer and a common meal. That's
right. Some people put it this way: if you come and worship with us, that's how you know what our theology is.
Right. Okay.
It's embedded in how we go about our worship, which is to inform the rest of our life, the rest of the week, not just that Sunday meal, but that meal is that which we are nourished by to face whatever we have to do the rest of the week. You know, often in churches on Sunday when the coffee hour, they hold a coffee hour waiting for me to come in to bless the food. And I say, I'm not going to do that. And I'll tell you why. The word Eucharist means in Greek, Thanksgiving, the great Thanksgiving. So we've just had thanks and we just had our meal. This is dessert. Fellowship and food is dessert.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, you know, and you know, I love the line. I can't my senior moment. So give us the strength to do what thou hast prepared for us to do.
That's the post-communion prayer.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, one question. You enjoy being a bishop, and is it fulfilling for you?
I tell you what I don't like.
Okay.
I get over 200 emails a day. I hate that. The hard part is when you are trying to help someone and they're doing things that are dysfunctional or even self-destructive. And that can be a congregation, that could be a priest. That's the hard part. When you come in from outside and you can see dynamics that churches really deny about themselves. Well, we're friendly and we're welcoming. Yeah, to each other, but not to somebody else.
Yeah.
Or how you go about, you know, regurgitating, as it were, the vestry is not helpful to you. You need some fresh air, you need to open up the blinds. You need to look at different forms of worship, not just rite one. What about once in a while using rite two or enriching our worship? It's that is so very difficult to get people to sometimes not go with what's comfortable, but what opportunities and encounters with God you can have in liturgy and with other people beyond that which is familiar. What I'd love, and I hate, of course, to deal with the discipline of clergy. I mean, that's always very hard because they've taken vows. Sometimes when it's egregious, it isn't difficult. But when it's sort of borderline, that, you know, it's hard because you want this person to be the best that they can be.
Yeah. For
the sake of the church and for themselves. What I love is what I at first could not get used to, and that is being in a different church every Sunday, to see the breadth, the depth, the broadness of our church. No church is like any other church. They all have some unique thing, even though we do worship similar, not always the same, depending on what ethnic group you're visiting with.
Right.
But I love the fact that each Sunday I'm encountering new people in Christ and new people asking me questions and challenging me, to tell you the truth, about things. Right now, the challenge is, of course, the protocols for COVID and people wanting to come out from underneath them. Not all, but some. I love ordaining people, of course. I'm one of the few bishops that probably more than not enjoys going to House of Bishops because of the fellowship there. And I get to be with colleagues, sharing ideas, thoughts, what are the new things they're doing? How might that apply to my diocese? How that might apply in what they do in their leadership to me personally in my leadership. I'm a very collaborative person, and I believe in mining ideas and then producing, you know, a diamond, hopefully, out of some kind of little rock that comes to you. I have to say I'm so comfortable now that after all these 19 years that there aren't a lot of surprises anymore. So I'm comfortable in that sense, but I'm not so comfortable that I don't get shaken up left and right sometimes, and that I'm not open to God's surprises. God doesn't shock me anymore. God surprises me. And that's sort of hard to say in a time when we see this rise of Trumpism, of polarized country. I don't want to be shocked anymore because I have never thought this country would see what it saw on January the 6th, 2021. And so there are so many shocking things around us and what people say with the ongoing being killed or detained or beaten while living Black or driving Black. We've had yet another example of it. And that white people don't connect the dots. They don't see the pattern. So these are hard times and they're challenging times. And I think sometimes God does surprise us with finding allies, with finding other people to work with through these issues and problems that we face. As I think there are three pandemics: COVID, the pandemic of racism, and the pandemic of lies and distortions.
Yeah. Yeah. You are also the dean, I would say, of the sisterhood of
Not
Black
really.
women bishops.
No, they're diocesans, and I'm a suffragan. And yeah,
You're all wearing the purple shirts.
okay. Within hierarchies, there are also other hierarchies. You know that. Okay.
Okay. All right. All right.
It is clear in the House of Bishops that diocesans speak first.
Okay.
And continually.
Okay.
And suffragans wait. It's an unwritten protocol.
Okay. Eternal, I gather.
Did you say fraternal?
I said, no, I did not. I did not. All right. So final question, but before I get to the final question.
Well, I'll say this. I am the senior Black female bishop, but I'm not the senior female bishop of color. That's Carol Gallagher. And again, she's a Cherokee. And she gets lost in the mix as often as anybody.
Yeah.
The church has not done her well. And what has happened to me has also happened to her.
Yeah.
There are parallels in our story. Yeah, she's suffered greatly.
That's powerful. Do you, well, first of all, I want to thank you for this time.
Oh, my pleasure.
I liken it to sitting with my Aunt B on the floor as a little boy as we leafed through her carefully constructed scrapbooks, leafing through the pages of the past.
Yes.
You've taken me on that journey today. And for that, I'm very pleased and happy, and it's a great blessing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for honoring me by even wanting to interview me. As I said, suffragans get pushed to the side, except for Barbara, because she was the first woman. And I appreciate that you saw some value in speaking with me. I'm honored.
Now listen, so you'll get a transcript of this, so you'll be able to fill in the blanks.
Oh, okay.
Right. All right, that's number one. Number two, final question. What did I not ask you that you want to be on the record and a part of the archive and the collection?
As a Black Episcopalian, I know that our presence in the church validates the church being itself, calling itself Catholic with a small c, universal. That our destiny in the life of this church is tied to the moral grounding that this church says that it stands for. That diversity is a gift from God. And that the Black church has always been that vessel through which, when times are hard, strength is found. It's interesting, when I went through all of my travails, I heard from white bishop after white bishop, I don't know how you did that. I don't know why you stood for that. And I go, because I'm a Black woman in America. Wow. And I know what it is. We have that old song, Jesus walked this lonesome valley. He had to walk it all by himself. Nobody knows.
Walk it for him.
Walk it for him. And I think the church can learn from the Black community and other communities of color, not just us, what it is to walk through hard times that white, I don't want to say privilege, I want to say entitlement. When that fails to operate and people feel, what we're going to do, like Chicken Little, or how can I face this? Come to the well of people who have been suffering and yet keep their faith, keep their heads high, who know they are God's child. That's the most important thing I think the Black witness can bring to the Episcopal Church. You cannot be the true Church of Christ without us. And we bring to you an understanding of what it is to face not only conflict, but tragedy. That you cannot be as strong as you want to be without us and other people of color. We bring to the table more than diversity. We bring an understanding of grace while under attack, under discrimination, under being treated unjustly. We are the witnesses to God's presence. It's in that hymn, lift every voice and sing. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, first true to our God, and then true to our native land.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless, Riley.
Bless you. Thank you. And
hope to see you in Washington again.
Yeah, but when you return.
I gotta call Wes.
Yeah. See you later. You will get the transcript soon.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.